Imagine waking up to find your pool completely drained. No warning, no permission, just gone. And the person behind it, an HOA Karen, who claims you're breaking federal law. The twist, you're not even part of the HOA. Sounds insane, right? Well, buckle up. Because today's story dives deep into one of the most outrageous cases of neighbor drama and overreach you've ever heard. We're talking legal threats, public humiliation, and the kind of petty power play that'll make your jaw drop. So grab your popcorn, because this one's wild. Stick around. It's a story you're not going to want to miss. And if you enjoyed this, 1. Be sure to click subscribe, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. It started like any good Saturday, dozen, silence, and that sweet smell of not having to deal with anyone's nonsense. I rolled out of bed, shuffled to the kitchen, poured myself a coffee that tasted like hope, and stepped outside, ready to soak in some well-earned peace. I had plans, big ones, the kind that involve zero productivity and maximum pool float time. And then I saw at my pool, my glorious, glistening backyard escape the thing I'd cleaned, chlorinated, and protected from leaves like it was my child was. Empty. Not just low. Not just hay. Maybe the pump shut off. It was bone dry. A drained concrete crater sat where paradise used to be. For a full 10 seconds, I stood frozen, mug in hand, trying to understand if my caffeine-deprived brain was playing tricks on me. Did it evaporate overnight? Did a sinkhole steal my pool water? Had someone, God forbid, stolen my pool? Nope. The real answer was worse, because right then, I spotted her. Karen. Not just any Karen. The Karen, mid-50s, short hair that looked like it'd lost a fight with a ruler. Sunglasses permanently perched on her head, like she was always ready to attend a Fox News interview. And of course, the clipboard, her emotional support object, her Excalibur of righteousness. She was standing on the sidewalk next to her azaleas, arms folded with the satisfaction of a person who just reported someone for having the wrong shade of beige on their mailbox. I didn't even have to ask. She wanted me to. She wanted me to confront her so she could unleash the full power of her HOA-issued wrath. So I bit. Did you? Did you have something to do with this? I asked, pointing at what used to be my aquatic happiness. Karen didn't blink. She smiled, the kind of smile villains get in movies right before they press the red button. Actually, yes, she said, in that overly calm voice people use when they're trying to pretend they're doing you a favor while completely ruining your life. Your pool was a hazard. I blinked. A hazard. Yes. In violation of federal water safety regulations. I had to act for the good of the community. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. You drained my pool. For the community. She nodded like this, made perfect sense. And what federal regulation, exactly? I asked. She whipped out a printed page, like it was a court order. Honestly, it looked like something she found in a Facebook comment thread. There were random bold words, some underlines, and a phrase that kept popping up. Waterborne contaminants, risk. Yes, born, not born, I noticed. This isn't real, I said. This isn't even a thing. Karen's face hardened. Are you denying the importance of public health? I'm denying you have any right to touch my pool, I snapped. I'm not even in the HOA. She gasped like I'd slapped the Constitution. Yes, you are. Every home in this neighborhood is under our jurisdiction. Nope, I said, already storming back to the house to grab my paperwork. My house was built before the HOA. I never joined. I don't pay dues. You have zero authority over me. Behind me, I heard her sputtering, trying to recover, but I was done talking. Back inside, I grabbed the original deed, the plat map, the letter from the developer, every piece of proof I'd ever need. And as I looked at those documents, one thing became very, very clear. Karen had just declared war. Not a neighborly disagreement. Not a simple misunderstanding. No, this was a full-blown clipboard waving, rules inventing, overreach of suburban justice, and I was the target. But she'd made one mistake. She messed with the wrong guy's pool, and that, my friends, was the splash heard round the block. Asterisk. If you've ever rage cleaned your kitchen at 7 a.m. while muttering legal threats under your breath, then you know exactly what kind of mood I was in. I slammed my coffee down, marched to the file cabinet, and started digging like my life depended on it. Birth certificate? Nope. Old tax returns? Nope. Oh, deed to the house? Bingo. Now, let me be clear. I'm not the kind of person who keeps paperwork in perfect alphabetical order. My filing system is basically a chaotic sandwich of important-looking stuff. But that morning, fueled by a lethal combo of caffeine and pool rage, I became Sherlock Holmes with a vendetta. I spread everything out on the kitchen table: surveys, closing documents, emails from the builder, HOA flyers from years ago, and there it was, a glorious, notarized piece of paper that proved one beautiful thing: I was never, ever part of the HOA. Turns out my house was built 2 years before the HOA was even formed. It wasn't included in their charter, their boundaries, or their newsletter distribution list. I was HOA immune, a free-range homeowner, untouchable. Now, a normal person, upon learning they had massively overstepped, might back off, maybe even apologize. Not Karen. Karen doesn't walk back. Karen doubles down like she's holding pocket aces in a game of moral poker. I walked right over to her house, documents in hand, already rehearsing my "what in the name of chlorine do you think you're doing" speech. She opened the door, like she'd been expecting me. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses on in course, very boss villain of her. "Karen," I began, trying to keep it civil. "We need to talk." She gave me that tight, smug smile that could curdle milk. "Is this about your pool?" "My pool, which you drained," I said, holding up my deed like it was holy scripture. "I'm not in the HOA. You had no right." "None." She didn't flinch. "That may be what your paperwork says, but we consider your property within the community footprint." I blinked. Community footprint? What does that even mean? "It means," she said, as if I were a child who just ate paste, "your house, while technically outside the charter, still affects the overall aesthetic and safety of the neighborhood." "Karen," I said, already losing feeling in my left eye from sheer disbelief, "you drained my pool, illegally, based on rules that don't apply to me. And you're using words like footprint like we're in a climate summit." She smiled wider, clearly thrilled with herself. Then came the piece de resistance. She pulled out a stapled packet of printed internet articles, complete with hand-drawn highlighter marks and some underlines that didn't line up with the actual text. "This," she said, waving it like a royal decree, "explains the dangers of improperly maintained private pools. Chemical imbalance, algae, mosquito breeding. It's a public health issue." I flipped through the pages. One was a blog from 2009. One was from a DIY site that recommended pouring bleach on everything. One cited anonymous experts. It was the WebMD of HOA arguments, vague, outdated, and very loud about nothing. "So you're telling me," I said slowly, "you drained my pool based on a BuzzFeed article and a made-up sense of community jurisdiction?" "I did what needed to be done," she snapped. "And I'm about to do what needs to be done," I muttered, turning on my heel. Back home, I sat down and pulled out my laptop. If Karen wanted a war, I'd give her one with actual laws, actual lawyers, and maybe, if I was lucky, some media attention. Because if she thought she could rewrite property lines with a clipboard and a Pinterest board, she was about to get the education of her life. This wasn't just about water anymore. This was personal. Asterisk. The thing about getting a lawyer is that it makes people suddenly take you very, very seriously. One minute you're the guy yelling about his empty pool on Nextdoor, and the next, you're Mr. Your last name being CC'd on very nervous emails. And let me tell you, the minute I hit send on that first message to a local property attorney, the air in the neighborhood shifted. Birds still chirped, lawns still got mowed, but you could feel the tension crackling like an overcooked barbecue. My lawyer, let's call her Amanda, because that's her real name, was everything. Karen wasn't. Sharp, smart, professional, also terrifying in the best way. Amanda took one look at the situation and said, "Oh, this is gonna be fun." We fired off a cease and desist so fast it probably left paper cuts. It was direct, it was scathing, and it went straight to Karen and the entire HOA board. That was the moment things really got juicy. See, up until that point, Karen had been acting like the queen bee of the HOA hive. Total control, big energy. But now the other board members started to panic. Turns out, when you act outside your authority and mess with someone's private property, you open up a big, scary door called liability. And no one wants to be standing in that doorway when the lawsuits come knocking. Suddenly, cracks started forming in Karen's little empire. People who had once nodded along at meetings now mysteriously had conflicting schedules. One board member, Dave the treasurer, straight up ghosted the group chat. Another, Sandy, leaked a few juicy emails to a friend of a friend who just happened to forward them to me. Accidentally, of course. Those emails. Chef's kiss. They were everything you'd expect, and more. Passive-aggressive subject lines like pool situation, AGAIN. Arguments about whether Karen even had authority to act. And one line from Dave that simply read, "This feels illegal." You could practically hear the panic. Meanwhile, the neighborhood turned into a reality show. People were whispering at mailboxes, exchanging gossip during dog walks, and openly speculating on whose side would win. And then came Bob. Bob lives 2 houses down, retired, suntanned, and blissfully unbothered. The day after the legal letter dropped, he set up a lawn chair on his driveway, popped open a soda, and positioned himself with a full view of Karen's house and mine. "What are you doing, Bob?" I asked. "Front row seat, man," he said, eyes behind mirrored sunglasses. Better than Netflix. By that point, I was getting regular updates from Amanda. The HOA board had gone quiet, radio silent. Karen, however, was still in denial. She continued sending out official-looking flyers about neighborhood safety and unauthorized aquatic activity, which is the most dramatic way anyone's ever referred to a backyard pool. The best part? She actually tried to host an emergency HOA meeting to discuss the escalating situation. Only 2 people showed up. One of them was Karen. The other just wanted to complain about someone's holiday lights still being up. In March, the walls were closing in, and Karen could feel it. Her emails got longer. Her tone got shriller. She started quoting obscure internet sources that I'm pretty sure were written by a teenager with a Wi-Fi connection and too much free time. Her favorite phrase became "in the interest of community values," which, as far as I could tell, meant because I said so. But the truth was already out. The board was crumbling. The neighbors were watching, and the legal hammer was mid-swing. Karen had picked the wrong hill to die on, and I was just getting started. If karma were a pool float, Karen was about to get dunked. It all started with a knock on her door. Not from me, not from Bob in the lawn chair, but from the HOA's own lawyer woman named Linda, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, but still carried the energy of someone who had absolutely had it. You could tell Linda wasn't here for pleasantries. She was here to clean up the legal mess Karen had splattered across the entire neighborhood like a busted sprinkler system, apparently. After Amanda sent her a rather spicy legal notice complete with exhibits, timelines, and a surprisingly elegant PowerPoint, Linda did her own digging, and the more she read, the more her face must have twisted into that perfect legal expression. "Oh no, we are not going down with this clipboard-wielding lunatic." In one swoop, Karen was told she had overstepped, illegally, publicly, repeatedly. She had acted outside her role, outside her rights, and here's the real kicker: outside reality. The HOA board, now down to like 3 members and a folding chair, voted unanimously to make her issue a formal apology. And let me tell you, watching Karen apologize was like watching a robot short-circuit in slow motion. They made her do it at the community gazebo during the monthly Meet Your Neighbor picnic. There were kids running around, old people sipping lemonade, and a handful of bored teenagers who only came for the free cookies. In the middle of all that, Karen stood at a wobbly mic stand, clutching a piece of paper, with shaking hands and the expression of someone who just discovered gluten-free pizza isn't actually pizza. She cleared her throat twice, adjusted her blouse like it was the blouse's fault, and then, with the charisma of a malfunctioning Alexa, she began. Dear residents and non-members of the HOA. Yes, she actually said non-members, like I was some sort of outlaw biker. I acknowledge that, in my effort to maintain the safety and cleanliness of our beloved neighborhood, I may have perhaps acted beyond my intended responsibilities. There was a collective eye roll so strong, I swear the earth tilted, she continued, fumbling over words like misinterpretation and unilateral enforcement, all while doing her best not to say I messed up big time, and the cherry on top, she somehow managed to imply I had confused her with my non-standard pool setup, which, for the record, is a normal pool. It's blue, it has water, it's not a live volcano. But sure, Karen. When she finally mumbled the last line, something about regret and community trust, there was an awkward golf clap. One kid booed. Bob, bless him, shouted, is she gonna refill the pool, too, or just air it out, with words? Karen stormed off the stage, red-faced and tight-lipped, but the damage was done. Her power was gone, her clipboard now a joke, her lawn signs pulled, her email privileges suspended. The HOA board officially removed her from any and all roles, including her self-appointed title of Community Standards Liaison. Again, not a real thing. Meanwhile, Amanda finalized our settlement like it was a boss fight. The HOA agreed to cover the full cost of refilling and repairing my pool, including resurfacing, chemical balancing, and a new filtration system. They also added an inconvenience fee which, let's be honest, I 100% turned into a poolside speaker setup and a unicorn float that could seat 5. They even threw in a line item labeled emotional distress compensation, which I've since lovingly renamed the Karen tax. It's funny. Just a few weeks before, I was the guy sipping coffee and minding my business. Now I'm the unofficial neighborhood legend. People wave when I mow the lawn. Strangers ask how the pool's doing. And every once in a while, someone whispers, "You really made her apologize, huh?" Yeah, I did. And it felt glorious. There's something deeply satisfying about the sound of a garden hose pumping fresh water into a newly resurfaced pool. It's like the universe whispering, "You did it, champ." The concrete was smooth, the tiles freshly sealed, and the only thing floating in the water was an obnoxiously large inflatable flamingo named Carl. Carl had been in exile during the Great Pool incident, rolled up in the garage like a forgotten beach ball. But now, Carl was back, and so was I. After weeks of legal threats, HOA meetings, and one gloriously awful public apology, the world felt right again. I had water, I had peace, I had a Bluetooth speaker blasting 80s hits from the patio, and Karen, she had vanished into the background like a villain in the final act of a made-for-TV movie, defeated, dethroned, and hopefully rethinking her life choices. What surprised me most, though, was how many neighbors quietly emerged from the shadows, like survivors from a reality show. Turns out, I wasn't the only one tired of HOA drama. One by one, people stopped by. First was Bob, obviously, who'd practically earned season tickets to the Karen show. Then came Anita, who revealed Karen once sent her a warning for having overly festive Halloween decorations. Read, one skeleton. Then Steve, who admitted he'd been told to repaint his mailbox 3 times because it was too matte. We laughed, we shared stories, and by the end of the week, we had an idea, an unofficial group. No meetings, no newsletters, no rules, just common sense, shared tools, and a group text called the Anti-HOA Alliance, where we mostly send memes and updates on who's grilling what. We even pitched in for a community fire pit, which Karen would have hated. That alone made it worth every cent. I hosted the first pool hangout. Nothing fancy, just burgers, music, and enough sunscreen to survive the surface of the sun. Carl floated, proudly in the deep end. Someone brought a cooler full of sparkling water, like we were filming an Instagram ad. The air was light, free, a little sunburnt, sure but happy. Every now and then, someone would glance toward Karen's house. Curtains drawn, porch empty. Clipboard, presumably, locked away in a drawer marked, "Do not use without adult supervision." She hadn't shown her face since the apology. I guess it's hard to hold your head high when the whole block watched you fall off your high horse and land in the shallow end. And me. I was fine with that. No revenge needed. No gloating necessary. The pool was full. The neighborhood had changed. And my weekends, uninterrupted, peaceful, chlorinated. There's this moment, around sunset, when the water glows like liquid gold, and the temperature drops just enough to make a cannonball feel heroic. That evening, as the flamingo bobbed gently and Bob debated, lighting a second batch of hot dogs, I stood at the edge of the pool. I looked around at the people, the freedom, the victory, and I jumped. That cannonball wasn't just a splash. It was a statement, a declaration, that I and my backyard were nobody's jurisdiction but my own. That no fake rulebook, no power-hungry neighbor, no rogue clipboard would ever dictate how deep my pool could be or how loud my laugh could sound. We may not have bylaws, but we've got something better. We've got cannonballs.